Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's panel. I hope during this time, everyone who wanted to join the event has joined. And I welcome everyone. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining. And today's panel is going to be on a topic of fundraising rounds and just generally discussion around fundraising for startups. And I'm joined today by a few amazing gentlemen, which I will introduce in a second. But before that, I will present the agenda of today, let's put it this way. After small introductions, we will have about 40 minutes for the discussion. During this time, please provide any questions that you can have. So some of them might be covered during the panel, but also at the very end, we will have about 10 minutes for the Q&A. So all of the burning questions that you might have, please drop them in the chat and we will be happy to address them. And today, the panel is run by Dealum together in partnership with the NuFund, and I will start presenting the panel itself. Probably the most appropriate way to start is presenting Serhat, who is the representative and the president of the NuFund Venture Group. Thank you for joining and being the integral part of the panel and helping us to put it together. Serhat has spent almost 25 years being an entrepreneur himself. He founded a lot of different companies across different industries, and he has built them from the ground up, grown them, and sold them as well. Some of the ventures have been successful, some of them not. So I would say he has walked the full circle of the entrepreneur life. The fun fact that I found out about you is that you have written a column for 5 years for the entrepreneurs for the Inc. magazine, which was very interesting for me to find and actually explains why you have such a great content on LinkedIn. You've been practicing for many, many years. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for joining. And we are also joined by Pankaj Kedia, who has been not an entrepreneur, but entrepreneur for many years. He has spent 17 years at Intel and probably one of the people who has helped the technology that we use today every day to be the way we imagine it and have it now, because he has worked initially on laptops and then he has went into other mobile devices such as tablets and phones. So thanks to you, we use technology and it looks the way it looks today. After Intel, he spent many years at Qualcomm as well, developing wearable devices and working with audio as well. And now many call you thought leader in AI. You are a chairman and AI representative for many companies. And if my research is correct, you have also invested in plenty of companies. For the past years, I think your portfolio is over 125 companies. And I'm excited to hear your side of the story as an entrepreneur working for big corporates and then turned investor and basically being on the bleeding edge of technology. Thank you.
Thank you, Daria. Thank you for having me. It is Kedia.
I'm sorry.
But no. If it is Kedia, then AI is spelled backwards. So you call me Kedai. Maybe I should change the name. Then AI would be spelled correctly. But I'm happy to be here.
Thank you for joining. And we are also joined by Steve Walsh, who has been, he also had quite a career. He has spent many years being the head of sales across different companies, started small, then grew, also worked for telcos, one of the leading telcos in US, and also at the global media and tech company, and has covered probably a lot of different sales positions and has very good knowledge in sales, marketing, and operations. after he has exited his career in corporates and decided to do something else with his life, maybe a little bit more exciting or not as stressful. He decided to put his network and extensive knowledge into work and start investing into the companies, into the startups. But what sets him apart from your usual investor is that he's not afraid to roll up his sleeves and work on the growth of the company. And his portfolio spans across 60 different companies. Half of them at least have reached Series A, and to date you have, I think, about 8 exits, unless something has changed. So, correct. Welcome and thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
I think I will start this discussion with drop you right into the waters and start with a question. Probably a lot of founders who are fundraising would like to get an answer to. What are the common mistakes founders make due to their misunderstanding or misconceptions that they have about the fundraising process or what investors actually want to see from them? I will probably pass the torch to Serhat. And considering you have walked the walk of entrepreneur and you've been on both sides, what is your take?
It's great to be here, Daria. Thank you very much. I wish I knew this as a founder when I was pitching and trying to fundraise, but the number one common misconception I see across many founders is the fact that when they're pitching and trying to approach the investors, they have the assumption in most cases that investors are looking to minimize risk and maximize return. I think that the accurate way of looking at how investors assess companies is not about minimizing the risk, it's about understanding the risk. So when you are as a founder, your goal when you're explaining your company is not to try to explain why there's very little risk, but there's no risk. I mean that if there was no risk, there's no return. So I think investors completely understand that, but they just want to be able to invest in something that they can understand what the risks are, so that they can quantify that risk as much as possible, compare that with the potential return, then assess for their own portfolio to make the right choice. So as in many cases, you as founders know most of the risks, and being more forthcoming and more proactive in describing the risk not only puts you in a better position when discussing your company with the investors, but also help the investors see things through and go deeper to understand the possibilities of how founders will be able to address those risks as they progress.
Daria, I'll add a couple. Number one, you're not pitching a product. You're not pitching a technology. You're pitching a business. Many times what I see, especially with technical founders, first-time founders, is they're obsessed about the product or technology. As an investor, I want to know what the product is, what the technology is. But more importantly, I want to know what the business is. If you have 10 slides, and if you have more than 1 or 2 slides on product, you are a product manager, not a CEO. Number one. Number two, sometimes or many times, founders think bigger is better. So the TAM will be $100 billion. or I saw a company $1 trillion. And some would be $1 billion, $5 billion. I remind you that the most successful YC company in the history of YC is Deal, DEEL. After 7 years, last year their ARR was $500 million. So if you are saying your SOM is $1 billion, $3 billion in 5 years, you lose credibility very quickly. So bigger is not always better. Credible numbers are better. And number 3 is, we are in the AI wave right now. Every company positions themselves as AI company. I would tell you 19 out of 20 companies are not AI companies. Just because you change the name to .ai, or just because you say you are an AI company, doesn't make it so. So don't be swept by every trend. Focus on the problem you're solving, the core value problem. Those are my top 3. Steve.
I think there's a couple of things that founders should realize as they think about fundraising. The first one is most companies will never raise venture capital. The percentage of companies that actually will raise is actually tremendously small. And most companies aren't venture scalable. They just shouldn't be raising venture capital. And for those companies that are and do qualify for it, I think founders underestimate how hard, how long, and the amount of time it takes to do this, especially in today's climate. Like even 2 years ago, the average round might take 3 to 5 months, and it might be 100, 150 conversations. Most of the rounds I see right now, because I closed one last week for one of my founders, took 7 months and 225 conversations for the round to be closed. And this founder had millions of dollars in ARR, profitability, growing double digits month over month. Every metric we would want to see as investors, they had, and it still took that amount of time and that many conversations. And I think founders go into this thinking, this is something they can do off the side of their desk. This is something they can do part-time. They don't understand the time and energy commitment to get the right investors involved in your round and get to a yes. So those would be my top ones.
Thank you. To elaborate on that, you mentioned that many companies will not fundraise, and also a lot of companies don't understand how much time it takes. For instance, in Europe, it's on average 6 months if you're really good and not in this financial climate. But for you as an investor, what were the companies that you actually really liked, but you were hesitant to invest, and why? What were the biggest turnoffs in such companies?
I think there's a lot. I think all too often, one of the challenges for investors like us is that we get enamored with a founder because they're great people. They present really well. They've got great experience, maybe context in the space. But I can't wrap my hands around the company or the business, to Pankaj's point. It's a product, not a company, or it's a great founder that doesn't really have a vision on how to build a venture scale company. And that makes me hesitant to pull the trigger. And that's happened a lot, where I really am enamored with the founder, but I just don't see a business here. I especially don't see a venture scale business, and I don't get how this product is going to take this business to the next level. So that's what I see a lot. But I'll defer to the other two gentlemen.
I think, Daria, it varies as you move to the right. First check, pre-seed, only 2 things matter. Is the market going to be big? By the way, not is the market big today. Is the market going to be big? When Uber started, the market was not big. When Airbnb started, the market was not big. So can the market be big? And number 2, is the founder visionary, strategic, doesn't take no for an answer, walks through walls, maybe has a good track record. So pre-seed, those two things matter. If the founder is obsessed with the problem, the solution will change. So I look for those two things. As you move to the right, let's say seed or Series A, the biggest turnoff for me is a wall of logos positioned as customers. Or somebody is paying for a pilot positioned as customers. Or somebody paying NRE to do some work positioned as customers. A customer is all those things, by the way, paid pilot, NRE, it's called funny money in our business, right? A customer means a signed contract, real revenue is flowing in from product or service. So if somebody is not straightforward about that, transparent about that, over positions the logos, it's a big turnoff.
I completely agree. Thank you.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, I mean, what I love about what I love about being around founders is that there's really there's so much excitement, and there's really no magic formula. And some of the turnoffs, in some cases, in a different founder in a different company might be actually the reason you would like to invest in a company, because I find that founders are great founders in their own skin. You cannot take a book or just a model and apply it to yourself and expect like Parker said, like obsession. It's great, but then the obsession could go into a point where it can become blindness because they are so obsessed about the problem and they fall in love with their solution, but then they get detached from the reality. And then on the other hand, you might have a founder that is too coachable or not enough coachable. Because if they're too coachable, they keep changing. They hear one thing from an investor, they go and talk to a customer, or they decide, or they got to switch to something else. Or they might be too uncoachable, where it's a great company, there is ARR, but the founder doesn't know what the founder doesn't know. Most of us as founders, we never have a first-hand view of being a good founder and growing a company before we do it. That's why it's great to be around great investors and other founders that you can get advice from. But some founders, what makes them very obsessed can also make them very uncoachable. So understanding who you are as a leader and surrounding yourself with great people, employees, team members, co-founders, investors can keep you real. But overall, I think, I would say there's no magic formula, and that's the beauty of it.
Thank you. And touching upon the coachability, wow. There is coachable, and there is the one who listens to it only investors and does whatever investors do. How do you find this fine line between listening to people who have invested into your company, have built companies before and have experience, but at the same time maintaining the vision of your company and deciding in some crucial moments to raise your founder card and decide to do something else, and how to maintain that balance between still needing to listen to your investors and acknowledging their presence in your company, but saying, no, thank you, I will do as I see fit, especially later on in the fundraising rounds when you have already a decent number of investors who hold a lot of shares in your company.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'll jump in. Coachable is an interesting word. If you look at highly successful founders, Mark Zuckerberg or Steve Jobs or Sam Altman, they are very good listeners. They have sixth sense. They are sensing from all different incoming indicators. But they have their own point of view. They are not going to flip just because a big investor says, go this way. So from my standpoint, coachable means somebody who's listening, but doing what he or she thinks is good for the company and the product. We should not assume that just because I'm a big investor in the company, or I have a reputation for a good advisor, anything I say, the founder will do. That's not coachable, right? So listening is the most important trait.
I would agree with Pankaj. If anyone's ever seen the movie Moneyball, which is about a baseball team, the Oakland A's and Billy Beane, when he's talking to his advisors about picking players, and they're all telling him that he has to listen to him, and one guy finally pokes up and says, "Guys, I don't think you understand. This is the man. We make recommendations. He makes decisions." And that's how I like to think about my founders. I don't ever want to, I tell my founders this, I don't want you to do anything I tell you to do. What I want you to do is to hear everything I tell you, and then you understand how it applies to your business and whether or not you should implement it now. That's all I want. And to me, to Pankaj's point, that's coachable. It doesn't mean they're a pushover. It doesn't mean they do anything anybody wants them to do, but they hear everything. They understand if and when it applies to their business, and they're able to execute on the things that they think will have the highest amount of impact.
Yeah. A founder at the end of the day is the person who understands that they're at the steering wheel, because they are the accountable. They are the one. They're where the buck stops. And if they are too coachable, it's not about listening too much, but it is depending on the other's advice and not synthesizing it. As a founder, if listening and like the best advice would make a company the best company, I think the most successful companies in the world will be the ones that hire the most consultants. But just like you cannot be a great company just listening to one consultant after the other, but you know what to ask, and then you have the good people around you that can give you good advice, and you using your sixth sense, like Pankaj said, and understanding the culture and the vision as founder said you share, you at the end of the day have to make the decision. So being it is a fine line being a coachable and uncoachable, and I think Pankaj's point about coachable means listen, but listen with an open mind, not listen either to take in 100% or listen, but you're going to do whatever you want to do anyway. That's also the point.
Thank you. I do agree. I think it's very important you find the investors to support you on your journey, and you need to listen and always keep an open mind to what they say. Either they have been through it as an entrepreneur, or they have seen it in their portfolio companies. They might bring some valuable input into your problem that you're facing, or the business itself, or how it's supposed to, it's not how it's supposed to be run, but in which direction to take it. But that is important when you have a good investor that actually cares about your company and wants to support and actually has the knowledge. How, in your experience, first-time founders who are just starting, especially at the very beginning of their journey, when money is important and it's hard to come by, how to make the right decision, how to find the right investor that will work for your company in terms of not work for your company, but be a part of your journey, and will stay true to your company and not push you around or run your business into the wall at some point. How to find the right investor?
I mean, I would go to what Steve said at the beginning of the first question he was answering. Not every company is venture foundable. Like as a founder, this is I mean, the best case, this is going to be a 10, 12, 13-year-old journey, because if you're successful, you will be successful over those 12, 13 years. So what is your vision? Do you want to be a venture foundable company, or do you want to build a great company and stick around? And once you have an understanding where you want to go, I think you can just go step by back and try to find the investors that will take you those steps. And it's almost like, okay, you want to be a Series C company, you got to find your Series A lead that will take you to the Series C in the way you want. If you want to be a Series A, that type of company, then you need that type of investor that can take you there. And it's also beyond being a compatibility issue. It's also about the strength and weaknesses. What is it that you need most help with? With European founders, if you want to be a big B2B SaaS company that would like to exit in the US, then you got to have US investors early on in your playbook. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I'll build on that, Daria. There are different types of investors. A VC is not always. Some founders think, if I don't get VC investment, if I get angel investment, that's somehow less. Doesn't work that way. When you're starting out, the best investors are friends and family and your personal sweat equity and your personal check commitment. As you move to pre-seed, you want to look for individual angels who are passionate about what you're doing. As you move to seed, you still want to stay in the angel space, come to places like NuFund, where we have 400 angel or 400 members, many of them angels, and pursue hands-on angel or NuFund and so on. If you get a VC, that's good, but it's not the end of the world in the seed stage. Series A is when you first get institutional investor or a VC. Many VCs have been Series A or later. Of late, given there's so much startup activity, especially in AI, we are seeing VCs move to seed with seed funds. So there is a little fuzziness there. As you move to the right, Series B, C, D, you want to pursue growth investors or sometimes private equity. So the type of investor varies as you go from left to right. If the fit is not there, it will take more than 6 months that Steve described. One other comment I would make is, when I'm looking to invest, if the round has been open for 6 months, it's a red flag. I shy away, right? So while fundraising takes 6 months, what you want to do is build relationships, informally share your pitch deck, what you're trying to do for the first 4.5 months. Then you know who's interested. And then in the last 6 months, you open the round, you quickly close it, and so on. So it might still take 6 months, but it is how you position it. If you open the round on day one and 6 months you haven't closed, that doesn't give good optics. But Steve, what do you think?
I think to the original first part of your question, Darsha, which is like, where do you find these investors? It's not as hard as you think, and it's definitely not as hard as it used to be. And what I find a lot of times is founders don't want to put the time in. For example, most of the folks on this call right now are coming from LinkedIn. There is a ridiculous amount of information available on investors on LinkedIn. Me, for example, I list not only what I've done, what companies I've backed, what funds I'm in, how long I've been doing this, my website, all the podcasts like this that we've done. It's very easy in about 35 seconds to figure out where I spend my time and what types of founders I like. In addition, there's resources like Signal, where you can search angels versus pre-seed versus seed funds in the AI space versus SaaS. There's Crunchbase, where you can look at other companies that look like you do and find out what companies back them in their early rounds and what funds. And then you go to the funds and they list their portfolio companies so you can see everybody. So I think with a little bit of research and a little bit of effort, you can find your tribe. And I think a lot of times a frustrating thing for me is I get on the call with a founder and I say, what do you know about me and what I've done or where I spend my time? And they're like, not much. I just know you're an angel. I'm like, really? You couldn't have taken a minute to look at my LinkedIn profile and take a look at what I've done and maybe where I spend my time so we can have a productive conversation? So I think there's more information out there today than years ago. And I think founders just have to understand where to look and what to look for. I think that's where I would start if I was an early stage founder.
Great insights. Thank you. I do agree that it's very important, as Serhat said, to build the good foundation. And when you fundraise your first rounds, already think about the next ones and choose investors that can help you later on get your next round and introduce you to the relevant people. And it is definitely true that a lot of founders don't do their homework and research who they're talking to. I think when you can start the conversation, open a conversation with, oh, I love what you did at the Qualcomm when you worked on this project, or that particular piece that you created for LinkedIn, I do agree, or I completely disagree because my point is this. Building this relationship very early on is very important and something that a lot of people overlook. That's great. You know who you want to fundraise from, and you do your legwork, and you know who you're talking to, and you are at the right stage, and you're talking to the right investors. But what investors, and usually investors look at the team and your business and the projections, what is the market, but what are the unwritten rules that investors follow and don't usually tell founders, or what basically is happening behind the closed doors to get the ball rolling? That's usually, from my experience, some investors, but not all, will not work with founders who are either in a relationship or they're related. For some, it's a definite no-no. For others, it's not an issue. What are other unwritten rules that we have in this game that you either follow or you don't follow, or you have met upon your journey?
Yeah, that's a great question. But I almost want to go back to what Steve says before I answer their portion, because I think Steve's point about understanding who you're targeting is very important. Because just like a marketing funnel, sales funnel, you're not supposed to be making 100 calls and get 100 yeses. And you might not even need to make 100 calls. You might only need to make 20 calls. And spending that time to understand the investor you're dealing with is very important, because I know diagnostics. Pankaj knows smart wearables. If you go to Pankaj, he will be a much better experienced investor that understands the AI aspect of smart wearable. If you are trying to build a company that needs help with go-to-market, Steve is your guy. But doing the initial work is so important. not only to have a higher conversion rate, but it's also important to get the value and how strategic you are at the earlier stages of your fundraising journey with getting the investors that are the right investors. And when I say right investors, I also mean this. I'm sure if you go to Steve and talk about digital health and diagnostics, he's gonna know stuff, but he's probably his risk appetite and how he's going to look at the founder and the product is going to be a little bit more blurry than maybe for me, because I know I build a business around that subject. So you have a much better chance to get me as a earlier investor because I can see through the risk better than Steve. On the other hand, like there's so many things that Steve would know and understand in 10 seconds that I will never touch because that's something I don't know. And I think the unspoken rules you mentioned are almost very much aligned with that, because all of us have some unspoken rules, and it's somewhat derived both from our experiences as investors, but also our specialty. Like I built my business with my wife. It was successful for me. Wife, husband couples is not a problem. But I know for a fact that I'm at the minority. Probably 8 out of 10 investors would not want to do that. Would not even want to touch a 2 co-founder team that are married. I know Steve, you work hands-on with your founders. I'm sure you have seen so many things like this too, right?
Yeah, it's look, I'll say one that's interesting because I'm the not underrepresented. It's a well-known fact that only 2% of money goes to underrepresented founders that don't look like me. Maybe they're immigrants, maybe they're female founders, etc. It's very hard if you're an underrepresented founder to understand who that 2% is. It's almost impossible because VCs don't say it on their website that we don't back immigrant founders, but everybody knows it because everybody that they back looks like me. I tend to take the opposite approach. If you look at my portfolio, about 35% of my founders are underrepresented. And it's not because I have this, I want to save the world and change the world, although I think it's the right thing to do. It's actually because when I look at my founders that have exited and the ones that have gotten to Series A and beyond, there's a higher propensity of those founders that maybe come from a different background. Maybe they're an immigrant, maybe they had a difficult upbringing, maybe they put themselves through college. Because I find that those founders have a grit and a willingness to win that others don't. You can't really see it, but it's one of those things. I don't know what I'm looking for, but I know it when I see it. And most of the time it ends up being founders like that. So it's unwritten. I don't jump from the rafters and say, I back founders that don't look like me. But when you look at my portfolio, people go, wow, you back a lot of underrepresented founders, immigrants, women. This is interesting. It's kind of odd coming from you. And that's why. So it's an unwritten rule. But it's an unwritten rule to the founder's advantage because I tend to back founders and I have a belief that great founders can come from anywhere. It really doesn't matter their background or where they're from.
Dari, I'll add a couple. Number one, answer the damn question. This is not politics, right? If I ask a question and the founder tells a story or a script or whatever, it's a turnoff. Number two, responsiveness. After the call or before the call, when investors ask a question and the email response takes a week, not good. Number three, sometimes the founders and CEO outsource fundraising to their VP of BizDev or to some board member or to some agent, non-starter. Last, integrity. I touched on this earlier. If somebody is over-positioning, if somebody is pretending to be who they are not on all aspects of the deck, it's a non-starter.
Thank you for the insights. I did not get a lot of unspoken rules, but it's actually a great insight into understanding how the mindset of the investors works. I would like to take this conversation in a slightly different direction because I really liked what Steve said about immigrant founders who are underrepresented founders. I know a lot of founders from Europe or from CE region, especially the underrepresented region of Europe, really like to enter the US because for them it's the land of opportunities. Or, for instance, I personally also worked with some founders from Africa, so they also move into that direction because you guys did a very good job at presenting your country as the country of dreams. What is the common mistake you see immigrant founders or underrepresented founders do when trying to enter US? And what would be your advice to them entering US? So either what mistakes you see them doing and what should be avoided, or what your advice from personal experience or from experience of your founders you can give to those who try to enter US as either fundraise or as their first or second market growing their company.
Serhat, that's all you, because you've done it as an underrepresented founder and now you back underrepresented founders. So you see both sides.
Yeah, I mean, how much time do we have? I mean,
not that much.
yeah. I think I'm gonna do it like Pankaj. Number one, commit. You know, if you're going to come to the US and really take advantage of this land of opportunity, you know, you can't just do it as one of your initiatives. It can't be about, let me find a salesperson right off the college and see if my product will sell in the US. It has to be a full commitment. I mean, either you're going to do it or not do it. And if you're going to try to do it, give yourself a certain amount of time, budget, some sort of resources, and jump in. Because if you are going to do it as one of the things you're doing as a founder, it's not going to work, because it's just, unfortunately, I see this a lot with especially the European founders that have a feeling like they understand the American culture and how we do business in the United States because they see it on TV or they have interacted, with some. They assume my product market fit in Europe, done. Go to market in Europe is done. Now I just have to find better marketing skills and salespeople to grow. It doesn't work that way. Marketing, the product market fit might have to be readapted. Go to market will most likely, a 99% chance, it has to be readapted. So all those things require you to be really committed and do, strategically. And I know that, like Pankaj, you're an immigrant, and I know in your portfolio you do have quite a bit of too. But like, I'm sure you see some cultural aspects and how they play into, unfortunately, more likely to be fails than successes. Didn't you?
Yeah, Sarat, I think doing your homework, making a commitment, super important. The other thing I've seen is, Indian company coming to the US. My question is, why are you not pursuing the India market? And if the answer is, it's very hard here, I cannot raise money here, I cannot sell product here, that's why I'm coming to the US, I scratch my head. Coming to the US, raising money is harder, getting to market is harder. So if somebody is coming to the US for the sake of coming to the US because it's the sexy thing to do, it's the right thing to do, but it has not been thought through, the commitment is missing, then normally it doesn't work out.
Yeah, so here's one that, because it happened yesterday, I was in a discussion with a couple of founders from Europe, specifically UK, Ireland, and it also happens from India, to Pankaj's point. They have this thing where they want to hold on to this, it's not weird, but aggressive tax structure that their home country allows them. For example, in UK, massive tax benefits to being a UK investor and being a UK company, because there's a government that gives you back a pretty decent tax break. The problem with that is a lot of times investors in the US, which is 90% of the venture capital in the world, don't want to invest in a UK company or an Indian company. It's not because they're bad. It's because it's different than 90% of the other companies we look at, which are Delaware Corps, which is the largest, most common corporate structure. But the founder wants to spend 30 minutes on telling me why he has to keep this UK or Canada structure for tax purposes and wants my help getting him US investors. And what I tell him is, you're wasting your time and you're wasting mine. You know what you can be? You can be the best tax structured UK company that does $10 million a year, but you're not going to be a $500 million US venture funded company. You just have to make a decision of what you want. Do you want the tax benefit for your investors, or do you want to be a venture scale company in the US? Your call. I'll help you do either, but you have to understand there's a difference. And I see that a lot, especially with founders that want to come over from the EU.
Yeah, I want to add on to that because that's an excellent point. And unfortunately, it's not as much studied by a lot of the out of US founders. They could just themselves save a lot of time if they do a little bit of homework. There is, a lot of information readily available, and it's different for the, Dutch company, German company. It's a totally different story. Finnish and UK, especially lately with all the sweeteners. But as outside of US ecosystems, they all give local incentive subsidies either to the investors to invest in these companies, sometimes free, interest-free loans. You get, yes, like maybe at the beginning, once you're starting to, turn your wheels, you're trying to have a little bit resources to invest, it might be great to be a Finnish company. And it's so easy, feels so much easier to get $300,000 from a Finnish investor that is subsidized, where the government matches 300,000, then they give another 600, and boom, you got 1.2 million. But it can create an anomaly and almost a feel of comfort to some of these founders, so that they don't want to leave that coziness and jump in over here in the US. So you have to maximize whatever you maximize on your home country, but if you're going to come and jump into this water, then you have to jump in. So that's a very, very important point. Thank you for bringing it up, Steve, because it is not as much talked about, even though it's so important.
It is true. I think you need to be prepared to go to US, do your research, and I think usually my advice to the non-US founders who wanted to go to the US to do the product market fit, get a very good traction in their home country and Europe in general, and then prepare to go to US, because I think everyone underestimates the competitiveness of the US market and how many startups try to start there, already there, or enter the market there. It's bloody waters, I will put it this way. And you have to have the grit and be prepared for it. I will remind the chat to provide us with some questions, because we're entering the Q&A section of the event. But whilst everyone who's listening to us brewing some really nice questions for us, hopefully, I would like to do the closing round and probably ask all of you a little bit of a different and a little bit of a personal question. I will start with Steve. And considering your huge portfolio and you working hand in hand with some of your founders and supporting them, would you consider, knowing everything you know, joining the startup or starting your own startup at the moment?
It's a good question. So it's funny, because I have my own startup. So the funny thing is that in a lot of cases, what ends up happening is folks like Serhat, Pankaj, and I become founders on our own. Now, we're not venture funded founders. We become service-based businesses founders. So I have a consulting business, I have an investment arm, so which all came out of me just working with founders. And but it's not a venture funded business. It will never be a venture funded business. It's 100% bootstrapped, and I want it that way. But that's what I see as my path, because it allows me to work with a number of different founders in a number of different industries and do things that I'm not only good at it, I'm real passionate about. And I get that chat a lot of, will you come join our company? Will you help us even further? I would rather be a one-to-many where I can help hundreds and thousands of founders a year as trying to help one company, because it's the thing that I just think I get the most joy out of. And I'm able to pick, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to pick and choose what I do and where I do it in the world, which is very freeing. And also I take that with a tremendous amount of humility and responsibility. So that's where I see my path. It will probably be the same as it is right now for the next 20 years, God willing.
Thank you. Pankaj, would you, as far as I know, you've never been a part of a startup where you're starting, you're scrappy, your path has been more of the internal innovation under the umbrella of a bigger company, which is still building a business and trying to build a business just under an umbrella. But would you consider building your startup now? Maybe we can see a next OpenAI coming from you.
Yeah, Daria, I think the same way as Steve. Roughly speaking, a decade with the internet, a decade with mobile, a decade with cloud. I started a few businesses or was an early employee at Intel and Qualcomm. So while it was not traditionally venture funded, we still had to go to the CEO or management to get the next year's budget approved. And because these were new businesses inside big companies, many aspects are similar. Now, I'm all in AI. I'm investing aggressively in AI, working with many startup founders. Using the benefit of my background, so they don't make the same mistakes I did. And the one to many that Steve talked about, you can have a broader impact. I'm also working with a couple of family offices who have an investment arm and their business. I'm working with a healthcare, with a Mexico family. They have a big healthcare business. And I'm helping them expand into the US and India and bring AI. So that's a side gig. But I have to say, maybe being a founder, being at it for 10 or 15 years, through highs, you have higher highs and lower lows. You have grit, you never give up. Maybe that's the hardest job. So my salute to all of the founders who do that. And actually my job, maybe speaking for Sarhat and Steve, investor's job is much easier than a founder job. And so I like the easy lifestyle, not the harder founder lifestyle. Sarhat, what do you think?
Actually,
yeah.
I would actually have a different question for Sarhat, because we know your answer that you would build your company because you did it so many times, and I would love to hear your take on? Would you start it now, knowing everything you know now and having all of the experiences? But also, would you, as a founder who is not originally from US, would you now decide to go to the US to build your company, considering that European and all of the ecosystems have grown so much and there is much more support in Europe and in other parts of the world for entrepreneurs who are just starting? Would you actually decide to make the move and go for US?
Oh, that's a very politically full question, but I'm gonna take Pankaj's advice and answer it directly. Absolutely. I mean, this is the country to build great companies. You cannot build ecosystems by creating pieces and try to somehow bundle it together. I mean, like the Bay Area is still the 45% of this startup ecosystem, and it's not because other ecosystems in the US are not trying to build ecosystems. It's just happened that way. It can change, but it just happened that way, and this is where it's happening. So I would definitely, do it. As a founder, and going back to probably the question about an investor versus starting a company, I know Steve and Pankaj enough to know that they do what they do, just like me, because we love what we do. It's not the easiest way we could make money. I'm sure there will be so much. I mean, venture investing, especially at the early stage, is not a great ROI business. We really do put our hearts into it, because I know very personally that both Steve and Pankaj love the founders that they work with. They want to seem successful, and they go great lengths to make sure that happens. And I think our drive is about being around creators, being around people with full of energy, innovation, and it energizes us. I almost feel like being like a professor in a great school, so that I get the students, I do what I can do, their success becomes my success, my legacy, and I want to do it with as many of them as possible. I think I found my place, like feeling like I can make a difference in the way that I do it, and I would probably want, even though there are sometimes problems I see that I go, why not somebody's fixing it? Maybe I should start a company, but then I kind of calm myself down, because I know it's a lot easier, like Pankaj said, to be on this side of the table.
That one thing I would add, just because Sarah talked about Bay Area, and of course San Diego. I'm in New York. Yesterday I went to this top 100 AI companies in New York, and this place was buzzing. Couple of weeks ago, I was in Bangalore at a startup event. That place is buzzing. 4 weeks ago, I was in Saudi Arabia. That place was buzzing. So startup Bay Area does not have the passport to be the only place for startups. You can make a place for yourself in many parts of the world, and a lot of action is happening around the world. It's very exciting what is happening.
It is true, and I am with you, gentlemen. I've worked with startups for only 6 years now, a little bit less of an experience as you have, but I also have of an opinion that it's much easier to be on the other side. And it's really nice to be a part of the ecosystem that is buzzing, but I prefer to either in future have my own non-VC backed business, or just stay on the investor side. It is much easier. I do agree. Thank you. I will take a few questions. I think let's start from easy one. And Seiko, I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly. Do angel investors participate in later stage funding rounds, such as Series A or B?
Yes. I'll speak for myself. I'm generally first check in pre-seed, double up in seed if the company is successful. Just the fact that the company is going to Series A, Series B means they are doing the right things. You know, it used to be in 20 and 21, 50% or more companies can go from seed to Series A and raise Series A. Now, the number is like 25%. Only 25% make it to Series A. So if somebody is making it to Series A, I want to double down. So the answer is yes.
Thank you. I think this is a good answer. Serhat, if you want something to add.
Yeah, we can go. Yeah.
We also have what ROI is expected from pre-seed investors. I think
I'll take that.
has touched upon.
Quickly. I don't think they look at it from ROI or IRR perspective. We don't say, oh, we got to make 35% IRR from this investment. With a pre-seed investment, it needs to be high risk, high return. You know, you do not want to invest in a company that, if successful, it's going to be 3x, 5x, 10x. I mean, let's face it. Early stage investing is risky. You can make a guess 10% of the time right or 30% of the time right. Since you cannot really calculate it, you just have to work with the multipliers and say, I want to invest in companies that can bring back 50x, 100x, 1000x from 10 years from now. And then the ROI will take care of itself, because if you're trying to say 20%, 25%, that's not going to work.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I have a next great question, and it's also touching upon the fundraising. Once you fundraise, basically, can you skip a pre-seed round if you already have a core team, launched product, and users and first paying users?
Yeah, Alexei, the terminology is a little fuzzy. You know, not every company has a pre-seed round. You can go to seed with the KPIs you have. So there is no right answer. Whatever works for you works. By the way, Daria, did we lose Steve?
Yes, Steve had to run away because he had another back-to-back meeting. Yes.
Okay.
So I think the answer is probably yes, you can skip, but it depends on your case.
Yeah.
I would say this is it for today. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining. I think the key conclusions from the panel would be that you need to look for the right investors, and the right investors should align with your vision. And you need to understand that the first investors will be bringing your next investors to you later on if you do the right choices and you go the full fundraising round. And it's also very important to be transparent with your investors, because the first impressions obviously matter, but also considering the amount of startups investors talk to, they can smell something shady probably from a mile away at a specific time of their life when they have had so many meetings. It's important to be transparent. You don't have to say there is no risk, because VC investments, or generally startup investments, it comes as granted that there is a risk, but you just expect great returns from some of your companies, and some others will not make it, unfortunately. This is the truth of this game. And also, you need to understand the needs of your company, and you need to do your research always, not only when talking to investors, even though this is very important, but when you're entering the next market or decide to enter an aggressive market or a more complicated market, but might be the very right fit for your business. So do your research, make sure you are transparent with investors, and always be over prepared, I would say, in this case. And also, there are a lot of great resources out there. Just go research in Google, don't wing it. Thank you so much, Pankaj and Serhat, for joining. This was a great conversation. Sorry for taking a little bit more of your time. And I hope you will have the great rest of the day. And thank you everyone who tuned in. I hope you got some interesting insights into this conversation and this topic.
Daria, thanks for putting this together. It was a pleasure. Thank you everyone for joining. Maybe a couple of parting things. This is a hard job. Surround yourself with a good support system, with teams, with advisors, with family, etc. Please feel free to reach out. Maybe I don't want to speak for everyone. Please feel free to reach out to me. Think of me as a pre-seed seed AI investor, always looking for interesting companies. And any advice you need, you can find me on LinkedIn. Serhat, is it okay for people to reach out to you?
That's perfectly fine, because like I said, we do this because we like, we want to have a positive impact. Sometimes I might not be able to answer properly. That doesn't mean I don't want to answer, but yes, please reach out if there is something specific you think that I can help you with. And similar to Pankaj, pre-seed, seed, maybe starting off a Series A will be a great time. And even though I'm on the investor side of things, once you're a founder, you're always a founder at heart. So this was a great conversation, Daria. Thank you, and Dealum for putting this together. And I hope if we can leave you with at least one actionable insight or one possible thing that you might do differently now that you heard something here, I would find this a successful conversation. So wish everyone a great rest of their day.
Thank you. And please do check out Steve's LinkedIn. You will find his Hands-on Angel webpage there as well. And you can find a lot of great resources. Reach out to him if you want to get investment from him or a conversation. I'm sure he will be happy to chat with you. Let's throw him under the bus, but this is your job, guys. This is what you do. And similarly goes for Serhat on his LinkedIn. You can find several organizations that he's a part of. If not precisely him, I'm sure his partners will be happy to talk to you as well. Thank you so much, and have the lovely rest of the day.